This is the DRF Players Podcast. Here are your hosts, Peter Thomas Fornatel and Jonathan Kinchin.
Hello and welcome to the DRF Players Podcast. Hope you're hearing me loud and clear. Producer Craig, that was strange. I heard it sort of like in the background, not in my earphones. But I'm hoping we're going out live to the world and we're sounding good for show 331. April 27th, 2018 edition. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornatel, back with you inside the Brooklyn bunker as we are getting very near. I believe it's 8 days away from the 2018 Kentucky Derby. That will be one of the topics we hit upon during the course of this show. Producer Craig, I'm hearing some background noise, like maybe you have a live mic in there and it's not, something's supposed to be muted that isn't. I think that fixed it. Excellent. But we will be talking about the Derby, of course, as the show goes on today. First things first, let me bring in my co-host. He was part of our Derby draft on Tuesday, and as a result, I didn't get to give him props for the very impressive picking he did on last week's show here on Friday. He gave out, I think he can claim the nice-priced winner at Keeneland, One Go, All Go. He can't really claim the winner at Aqueduct in the stake we talked about there, but if you were listening closely, I think you certainly would have thrown that $29 horse in to any multi-race bets you put together. I'm talking about the People's Champ, the Baron of Breakage. He's Jonathan Kinchin. What's going on, JK?
Yeah, it's been a little bit of a better going than the Baron of Breakage as of late. Things have been going well. Unfortunately, they've been all feeders. So
right, the first man of feeders, I should have said. I apologize for. I went with the old nickname.
And I had to get our resident math guru. I had to show him what time it was yesterday. Eric Bialik hopped in a head to head with me, and I had to flex my muscles on him. So. He texted me a few expletives throughout the day during that head to head. We both had some pretty nice horses win, but we both had them. So, and then he got snapped to beat me with like a 9-1 shot. So, fun. It was fun. It's always fun to get on there and compete on those things. And you got to give Craig a little bit of a break. He's fresh off of the boat from the Bahamas.
I do know he's. I wasn't upset. I was just trying to get it. So you're hearing this like banging around in the background. I know he's very excited. NFL draft. That's a high point of the year for him, and we'll be able to get his NFL thoughts, I'm sure, before the season starts. For me, though, I can't. April, I can't think about the NFL yet. I'm still fully in horse racing and baseball mode, as you hear a little shake from Muggsy, the handicapping Labrador, who is she's back.
She's ready for Derby. I got a funny NFL draft story I didn't tell you yet. Last night I was in an Uber and coming from dinner, and our Uber driver was a younger guy, and he was listening to the draft live. And with the 17th pick, the Dallas Cowboys select, and they said some obscure linebacker from Boise State or something. I don't even know who it was. And our Uber driver goes, he uses the F expletive, F yeah, like really loud. And I was like, geez, what if we would have been offended? He didn't know that I don't mind the F word, but I thought it was pretty funny.
Yeah, I'm going to guess that he doesn't have 4.9 stars, JK. Just going to take a wild guess. Now, this is interesting. I was talking with producer Craig before the show about the NFL draft, and he confirmed I hadn't seen this before. We talked about some of the weird things that happen in the drinking establishments in my neighborhood. We talked a while about the axe. I walked by that place the other day. I still haven't been in to the place where you can throw an axe, get in the back room. Apparently, the thing, producer Craig confirmed in my neighborhood, you can go out to a bar, watch the NFL draft. Okay, that's tough. But listening on the radio, I mean, at what point isn't just, checking your Twitter, Uber a better?
Exactly. He was listening to it on the radio, and he was fired up. He was really fired up. And then they came and they announced a trade of Martavius Bryant, who was, I think he played for the Steelers. He was a Clemson guy. He got in some trouble for the smoking the hippie lettuce, and then they traded him to the Oakland Raiders, and he did it. I guess he found out we weren't offended by his first F-bomb, he dropped another one in excitement about that situation. I was like, wait a second, I thought you were a Cowboys fan. He's like, well, I'm a Martavis Bryant fan too. Okay, whatever, man.
That the hippie lettuce reference would have been a lot more home on the show 7 days ago, JK.
You're right about that.
I'll just say that. Let me ask you this about your high school coaching days. Did you coach any players who ended up playing in the NFL? Like, I don't think I've ever asked you this before. On air
yeah, no. In fact, we talked before. You're going to remember this story. My buddy B Squared. It's how I got so close with B Squared.
Right.
Kid that we coached. He plays for the Miami Dolphins currently. He was a 3-year starter at center at UCLA, and he plays for the Dolphins now. The last school that I coached at, Plano East, at one time when I was there, we had 5 players in the NFL.
That's
which is quite a bit for a high school. Yeah, we had so we've definitely been able to see some guys play. Keenan Robinson was a kid that went to Plano East. He played at Texas, and then I believe he was a first-round draft pick, if not a second-round draft pick. So yeah, we've had our fair share.
You mentioned the concept before. You were talking about playing in a matchup game with Eric Bialik, and you mentioned that idea of you can land on a lot of the same horses as your opponent, and then it kind of changes the nature of the contest where only a few races matter. What is the most picks in common you've ever had with somebody in a head-to-head?
I think it honestly was on Wednesday. Tournament guru, a guy that you don't really want to see lined up across from you in a contest, Tony Zhao. We jumped in one together, a $216 head-to-head, and it was 8 races. It was 8 race event. It was all Keeneland, 1 through 8, and we had 6 of the same horses.
That is very, very interesting. I wonder. It makes me wonder. Tony's so sharp. It makes me wonder if he wasn't modeling you, JK, and trying to. He's trained his computer to think like you. And,
he messaged me, and I don't want to misquote because it was actually really funny. He sent me a message on Twitter that said, "Enjoy my donation to the Kinshin Ice Cream Fund."
I love it. Let's talk a little bit more tournaments. We're going to do a bit of an upside-down show today. I want to talk some tournaments. Then I want to look at just a handful of races from across the USA this weekend because I know our listeners will be out there playing. And then I think we'll spend the rest of the show. We've gotten a bunch of questions about the Derby, looking ahead to the Derby, maybe a quick preview of some Derby and Oaks undercard stakes. But let's start off with tournaments, JK, and let's start. We talked about it briefly last week, but I want to hit the note nice and hard for the listeners ahead of this weekend's big World Horse Player Tour Santa Anita Preakness qualifying event about this new promotion folks can participate in on DRF tournaments.
Yeah, it's with the World Horse Players Tour, the TV pilot. There is we're kind of ramping up. There's about 3 weeks left until the Preakness, and so there's going to be a last chance contest. There's going to be 2 last chance contests the following the last weekend leading up to the Preakness, in between the Derby and the Preakness. There'll be a
12th and 13th.
12th and 13th, thank you. $458 on Saturday, kind of what they've been doing, and then there'll be a $1,000 and 90 1 in 5 contest on Sunday, just a kind of last chance, a guy that wants to look for, or a guy or gal that wants to look for a little bit of an edge there to try to get into the contest for a little bit cheaper. What we're going to do is the player that handles the most money starting on Wednesday, so you've only missed 2 days, you're not too far behind, the most money on WHT events and does not qualify, because you can only have 1 entry in the WHT. Whoever handles the most money in WHT events will get a free $1,090 entry to that last chance on Sunday. It's DRF tournaments and the World Horse Players Tour way of saying thanks for participating. You tried really hard to get qualified here at the end, and we're going to try to help you in that one last effort to try to get qualified. So that should be pretty cool.
A little boost, and also maybe gives people a valid reason. Obviously, depending on what your opinion is, I wouldn't encourage somebody to just take extra entries, but simply because of a promotion. But if you happen to like horses, either in this weekend on Sunday, the next $458 direct qualifier, or in that last chance 458 game, maybe you play 2 entries instead of 1. Maybe you play 3 entries instead of 2 in an event, making an attempt to qualify. I mean, it's possible that the person who wins that bonus will have only taken 1 entry in those games and will handle the most money via the feeders that are happening every operating day. What would be your guess, though? What type of player is going to win into that big money last chance game?
I don't know. I mean, I think that it's just going to be a guy who believes in his ability to qualify, which is something that is, I'll be honest, at times has gotten me into some upside down situations. I qualified for Keeneland this year, but if I would not have qualified, I would have almost had paid for 2 entries. But since I qualified, I ended up on the positive side of things. So I think someone who believes in their ability to qualify could potentially chase trying to get qualified. If they just have a couple of unlucky breaks, this is kind of a rebate of sorts. It's actually probably better than a rebate. I don't see how someone could spend more than, I mean, you can't spend more than $5,000 between now and then trying to qualify. And if you do spend $5,000, you're going to get $1,000 back. It's just a 20% rebate. So, I think this should be someone who just believes in their ability to qualify. And so they don't have a problem kind of putting the money out there because they know that on the right day they will get qualified. And I think it's another important thing about this idea, this kind of handle bonus of sorts is Pete, you might want to tell our listeners, I don't know if we've covered it in detail, and I know that you probably don't have the dollar amounts in front of you, but the WHT has kind of a handle bonus situation that they're going to be doing at the track Preakness weekend. There'll be one contest Friday and then a separate contest on a Saturday combined. And I know the numbers in front of me.
Dig and find easily enough. Basically, the idea is, it's not at the Pegasus tournament. It was a literal rebate. You got a percentage of your wagers. Contest, you get money back based on how much you handled. And the top prize for the Saturday, Sunday contest, you can get $10,000 back if you're the player that handles the most money. Acts as a de facto rebate. Just another. It's a way we're trying to encourage people to bet through the windows, get Santa Anita those golden dollars, and a way also to reward the players by, okay, you might not get the rebate that you normally get on your ADW, but you have a chance to get something a little bit better.
Right. But if you think, even the guys who are getting the best rebates out there, right? I mean, the best absolute rebate that you can get, I'm sure there's some guys who can find a way to get, 10% back or whatever. If you would have to bet $100,000 in a day to equal the $10,000 you would win for getting first place on a Saturday, Sunday big handle prize pool. Second place is $5,000. Third place, $2,500, and it pays all the way down to 10th place for $500. And then on Friday, if you get in early and you're a guy that likes to fire, you can get $2,500 if you're the guy who handles the most on Friday. $1,500 for second. All the way down to 5th place is $250. So you can go to Din Tai Fung with that $250.
You could take about 10 people out at Din Tai Fung for $250. It's going to be a fun weekend. We're hoping folks are going to join us. If you're interested, if you have questions about the event, hit us up. You can find us both on Twitter. I'm at LoomsBoldly, JK, of course, at UT Big Hair. A name, by the way, that you're living up to lately based on your appearance on the Keeneland simulcast the other day.
Yeah, I'm actually trying to decide what I'm going to do with this mop of mine. It's I had the shaved head for a while. It was time for a change. You know what they say? It's the curls for the girls. So I just tried to bring them back out a little bit, see if I couldn't get these curls back in action. Like when I was a little kid.
Is the full afro in the conversation?
No, I can't. I can't. I don't think I can do that again.
You're disappointing me terribly. I thought it would look great on TV, but
we could do a head-to-head or something. But you're going to have to really raise the stakes if you want to.
Yeah, I don't know what the tattoo on my face. What's the equivalent? I don't know. All right, enough of that. And tournament-wise, just check out DRF tournaments. Tons of qualifiers going on this weekend. We've also announced the Saratoga and Del Mar games. You can start feeding into those. On Sunday, you have an opportunity to the next three biggies, May 19th to 20th, of course, World Horse Player Tour Santa Anita contest. All the money's added. We're filming it for a TV show. Going to be a ton of fun. You also have an opportunity for June 2nd at Monmouth, the Pick Your Prize event, opportunity to get seats for the Breeders' Cup tournament, the National Horse Players Championship, and, of course, on all in that one. And then big money Belmont game. What's that, a $10 buy-in? Is it more than that, JK? I think 3 entries in both of these, so you should know.
10,000, yep, 10,000.
And you're attempting to do both. You'll be spending some time in the New York area in June, it sounds like.
Yeah, I missed Peter Luger's last. I'm not missing it this year, so it is on my agenda to get out to Belmont. We'll be 3 weeks removed from this contest, and so be geared up, ready to roll for that one. So I'm going to try to get quiet. I had the first man of affairs. I had 3 Belmont entries weekend, so I'm not buying. I didn't have to buy in. I won into 3 different situations, so I'm going to try to turn those into something. But don't worry, I've played with 3 a lot and ended up with 0, so it could be good money.
I have seen that movie before. It's also going to be funny because I think you're going to end up reverse commuting from California to New York for a couple of weeks there, JK, as I probably will too, presumably working on the show during the week, come back from Monmouth, go back to LA, work on the show some more, come back for Belmont, go back to California. It's going to be pretty interesting.
Yeah, but, you're 3 to 5 to get a, so we got to get you healthy.
Well, I'm dealing with the after effects of whatever this thing is that's bothering me, but I'm LASIK's on, and we're hoping for the best. Let's dive right into a few stakes races, JK, and make sure we leave plenty of time for Derby Oaks and Derby Oaks undercard stakes chatter. And let's start off with Belmont. We're going to talk about this turf sprint list stake. The one off the page for me was Commute, who I thought had a good chance of speed and really fit among the best finishers in the race as well. My reckoning. Where did you go in here?
Yeah, there's a lot of names here that mentioned. The first one was obviously undrafted, the 8-year-old who shows up here with a significant break. He has, he won last time, but then he kind of had a rough go of it. And I think that 7 is probably where he wants to be. I'm not sure if I want him off the break like I 8-year-old. I'm sure they know what it takes to get him fit. He's been working on the turf at Keeneland, so I think he's one to consider. But it doesn't seem like there's going to be a ton of pace in him. Carafa is a cool horse who needs at least there's a call. I think I'm going to go with Blind Ambition. I'm not typically a guy the cutback in sprints, but a mile to 7 furlongs is a little bit of a different ball. And the other thing that gets going with Blind Ambition is he had a 182 form figure early in that race. So you talk about a speed situation. If he can wrap in a little bit of that from the inside, save ground, I think it could be tough with John.
A little in there, JK. Not sure if there's any way you stabilize, but we got the most of the message of where we're going. Let's move on to Churchill. Somebody wanted to pass the note on to listeners, just giving a shout to how fun the Churchill Downs opening night is as a racing venue to check out. I've never been. Have you ever been to an opening night at Churchill?
I've never been to opening night, but I have to Downs after dawn or Downs at dark or whatever. It's great. It's really fun vibe there. So I would imagine that opening night's just as good. I've never been to opening night. Typically, I'm ramped for the last 9 years for a trip out there, so I haven't done it.
I should have guessed that you hadn't had the opportunity to do that. I'm going to guess it's Downs after dark. Take a wild guess. That's the name of the promotion. And it's an excellent Churchill promotion, though it still doesn't hold a candle to Thurby. To me, the silly marketing promotion never worked that I've ever heard of. And I don't think we'll talk much about Thurby. I guess we will because we're doing a podcast on Thurby. So I'll get to make a lot of Thurby tweet. But Downs after like fun. Haven't had a chance to do it. We typically do Stephen Foster night? Is that still extant in the era of the Kentucky Derby betting challenge?
Yeah, they usually they have done it in the past. I don't know, if they're still continuing now that the Derby challenge has started kind of pace. I don't know if they're just kind of focusing on that, but I've done it in the past, and it's a fun contest too. It's like I said, night racing's for fun. Like watching the racing in the lab. It reminds me of my favorite times that got me involved in racing was those Friday nights where Hollywood Park would run at night. You grab a 6-pack of Coke, I guess maybe, and sit on the couch and watch Hollywood Park.
Drink your Coke, bet your J Beans, the whole 9 yards. Yeah, I have memories of hanging out with Sean Clancy back in the day. One of our favorite weekends of the year, Memorial Day, we'd always go to Fair Hill races, and to come down on that Friday night, and we'd typically be hanging out with friends, and racing would begin. That card would begin at 11 Eastern, so that was it was always fun to be degenerates and watch baseball and bet Hollywood Park. No more, however, though you can if you're in the state. We'll go at 11 p.m. I like Beckford in here, JK, and this is a horse who I'd flagged up as one, actually ran pretty well in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, but was a horse that I'd sort of flagged up as one who didn't want to go that far. So I like the cutback. The 5 may be a little sharp, but I like it in concept. A lot has been made of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, and all the horses who've come out of it well on both dirt and turf. We answered that question a couple of weeks ago about how a turf race can still sort of be an important form indicator for horses running on who are coming back and running dirt. And there's no better example when you look at horses like Catholic Boy and Flame Away, my boy Jack, who came out of here to run well on dirt. And then, of course, you have the European contingent, Massar, who came back and won impressively on his return to the races and is one of the market leaders for the Guineas coming up. Sands of Mali came back and ran and won in France. Where are you going to go in here?
I see you were about to fall off. I had to come in here and save you. So you're sound like you're about to choke, Pete. Are we going to lose you?
I had to mug my throat. I'm not like you and Maloney. I don't want to be clearing my throat on the air all the time.
Does Muggs know CPR?
No, I'm fine. Just a little. She's. I think she'd sleep through my asphyxiating, unfortunately. But
this is an interesting race. I think a lot of people. I love races like this. I actually have an opinion that relates to the same opinion a little bit later. Bob Baffert is become a household name with what he did with American Pharoah. I think people that just show up to the racetrack once a year probably know who he is. And when he shows up, they pay attention. Unfortunately, I don't think they pay attention enough to realize that Baffert doesn't really excel on the grass. It's just not his program. It's not the type of horses he gets. However, this horse Mask, he's won back-to-back races with and won them both well down the hill. So not only am I going to try to beat this horse because it's Baffert on the grass, but I'm going to try to beat the horse because it's a 6.5 horse down the hill, which plays more like a mile, who's now cutting back to 5. He's cleared in both of those situations. He will not clear here. I'm going to go with Battle Station, the 8 horse for Wesley Ward. Wesley Ward knows his way around turf sprints. This horse ran a 1:08 time form figure as a 2-year-old on debut at Saratoga. At Saratoga going 5.5. That 1:08 is pretty comparable to the 112s, 111s, 109s, 107s you're going to see from the other horses. I think that this horse even improves a little bit from his 2-year-old debut number. He could be tough, and I don't think anyone worries about Wesley Ward on a 76-day layoff in a turf sprint.
Fair enough. This is that data link that won during the NHC going down the hill, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right, JK? Masked for Bob Baffert? It
is. He won at 9-1 on February 10th, and it resulted in Ryan Flanders assaulting me like he does every now and then when he tips me on a horse and I don't use the horse, and then the horse wins, and then he follows it up with "You don't ever listen to me," and and then I remind him that he was second to me in the Tour, and then we get in a fight, and then we move on.
Crickets, JK, crickets. I was going to ask you about this horse, though. I get everything you're saying, but let's talk about this race for a moment from a multi-race betting perspective. We've talked about how when horses, quote unquote, run through their trainer in a certain category, how often you give them extra credit. A classic example, and get your bingo cards out, everybody. classic example, Divisadero, who when he won on debut for Buff Bradley, Bradley hadn't won with a debut starter in however long it had been, and that flagged him up to us and others as a horse because he was able to run through that stat, probably did a lot on his own, probably had more to come down the line. I was just wondering if because Baffert and his typical turf record, not great, obviously turf for him typically more of a plan B or C for horses, he's so proficient on the dirt. But this horse, with this pedigree, having won impressively twice on the turf, if he hadn't run through, quote-unquote, the Baffert turf training to the point where you'd at least include him as an A in multi-race wagers.
Yes to everything you said, but no to the last question you asked. No, these are the opportunities I think that you have to make money when you can find a horse that's going to be overbet, a horse that's going to be on everyone's ticket. If you can leave him off, the equity that you gain is huge. Now, let's toss out the whole Baffert thing. Let's just pretend that doesn't exist. Let's pretend that this horse is trained by, I was going to say John Sadler, but we're shipping, so that's probably not a good one. Let's go with Mike Pipey. The problem is that the horse has excelled going 6.5 down the hill. And we talk about it all the time with the switch from Santa Anita to Del Mar. The 6.5 and the 5 are a completely different ball game. This horse will not clear. Timeform US has him 6th early. He's going to be behind horses for the first time. He's going to have to pass horses. He's got a jockey that's never ridden him before, and he's got a lot less ground than he's had previously. He's the type of horse that, in my opinion, if you can toss, that you can make a ton of money. If he wins, you don't really want that ticket anyways, unless you just love something later and it's a bomb and you can single. If I was playing in a multi-race bet, I would try to get rid of him completely based on all of those factors.
Defensive use at best, but really one to take most of your money that you're going to be putting into the picks in this sequence and try to oppose for JK. Unless
you think this thing's a freak and you think that 5 is actually going to suit him, you have a handicapping reason leading you to why he's going to excel at 5, why he's going to excel on a turf course that's probably going to be a little bit doesn't play nearly as fast as you would expect it does in Southern California. If all those things are things that you believe, then God bless you, go on with it. I'm going to try to beat this horse at what should be a short price.
Speaking of Baffert on turf, let's move our attention out to Santa Anita, and let's take a look at the Grade 3 Santa Barbara, which goes as the 4th race on Saturday. Baffert has the morning line favorite here with number 6 going 1.5 miles. Plain Air, I'm guessing, is the name of this 5-year-old mare who won on debut for Baffert. Does the race go through her? What do you think is going to happen here?
Yeah, no, part of my out of the gate play was the same idea. I don't want to reiterate it, but we've talked about it and we know it's not. This isn't Baffert's thing. Baffert's thing is not 1.5 miles on the grass. So why I would want to take 8-5 or whatever this horse is going to be on a horse off 104-day layoff, 1.5 miles on the grass. Yes, the horse won a stake last time, wire to wire. That's great. I think this is going to be a jockey's race, and so I'm going to take the 3 best grass riders in California: Kent DeSomo, Corey Nakatani, and Flavian Pratt. And I'm going to say that one of those 3 is going to outsmart Tyler Bays in this 6-horse 1.5 mile jockey's race, and I'm going to fade the Baffert. So I'm going to take the 3 Baltuses versus the one. Well, there's 4 Baltuses. I'm going to just take 3 of them versus the one Baffert.
You might have to turn in that silver wig, and he may be blocking your calls.
Hey, trust me, I'm not even going to take it off next week. So I sent the dry cleaners. So don't worry. I sent it to the dry cleaners. It's getting pressed, getting colored. We're cutting off the split ends. It's going to be pristine for next week because I won't take it off next week.
All right, fair enough. But not only going against Baffert, but not only not keying him, but not even using him. It sounds like for you in these 2 races. Now, normally, I can hear some of your friends on Twitter now, JK, saying, "Oh, he's supposed to be such a great handicapper. He's taking 3 horses in a 6-horse race." Why does it make sense in this instance?
Well, I mean, because he's going to be bet, you know, and he's going to be bet, and that's where the value is here. And I'm also, you know, I like to think that I'm smart enough to know what I don't know, and I don't know which three of these three is going to win. And I have no problem having a strong opinion when I have one. I just don't have one. It's going to be a trip situation. It's going to matter who breaks, who goes where, what does plain air do? Does he take back? Does he dead send? Does Queen Blossom somehow end up on the front end? Does Kent somehow end up on the front end? Because we know that he'll end up on the front end when he's not supposed to be on the front end. There's no way to know what's going to happen in this 1.5 mile race. So my wager, my bet, my handicapping of the race is I'm going to try to make some money by completely opposing a horse that I think will be probably the first or second choice. I don't think he'll go off as the favorite. I think that the world kind of knows the same thing, but he's going to be short enough that fading him is where your value is created, whether it's the pick 4, the pick 5, or the double.
Fading her, but everything else sounded good. Now, as for the 3 horses you're going to use, unless you meant Baffert, as for the 3 that you're going to use, would you use them equally, or would you press one of Lucy D, Pants on Fire, or Queen Blossom?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think Lucy, I mean, the morning line suggests the same idea that Lucy D and Pants on Fire are, you know, the market suggests that they're going to be the more likely of the 3. But yeah, no, I would always try to do that. I mean, I think you should always try to weigh your opinion. If you're going to bet $100 in a double or $100 in a pick 4 or whatever it is, take the time to construct extra tickets. So, you know, have a $2 ticket on the one you think is the most likely with Lucy D. Have a $1 ticket on Pants on Fire and a 50-cent ticket on Queen Blossom. If you can do that, at least you're coming out on this thing on the better side of planning when it comes to the equity distribution in a wager.
All right, you faded Baffert hard 2 races in a row. Now we move on to the Grade 2 Californian, which goes as the 5th race at Santa Anita on Saturday. We have your man in here once again with Dr. Door. Seems like a pretty good opportunity for Dr. Door to finally get some earnings in a graded stake just based on the light composition of the field. Are you going to be using, or are you going to be opposing yet again?
It's in the cleaners, man. I you know, look, I had to make sure that it was right. Like I said, I'm going to put it on probably Sunday evening, and like I said, I'm just going to sleep in it. I'm not going to take it off or anything. So I'm not even going to get a haircut next week. I'm just going to wear the wig. So, look, a lot of my handicapping principles are based on what I see initially in the pace projector on Timeform US, and the one looks dead loose. It's going to save ground. He's fast. He's all these things. But if you look at his last race, his first time going 2 turns, or excuse me, his second time going 2 turns, his first time doing it successfully, he had blue fractions early, which means he had an easy lead. He was on a track that I think was probably favorable to inside speed. So he had everything going in his way, in his favor. The lieutenant, so I looked to the lieutenant, but the lieutenant was on that same rail, kind of chasing right around there too. Soy Fett was in an advantageous spot last time. I went with the 3 Curlin Road, who's not even in the picture on the pace projector, and the 6 Prince of Arabia, who's also not in the picture. And it makes my stomach hurt a little bit because I'm picking horses that are going to come from off the pace in a race that suggests that it's going to favor horses that are on or near. But I think that the value is going to be there on those 2 horses. I understand that it's a little bit risky. Save with the other ones that you like. But my play here is to try to pick up some money and shock the world with these horses are 7, 8, 9 to 1. I think 5 to 1 is way too short with some of the other horses that are in here. I think both of those horses could go off above 10 to 1.
Soy Fett, the old warrior, looking also for some graded stakes earnings. You give Soy Fett a chance here?
I mean, if Soy Fett works out a trip where he wins, then I think Dr. Door, the lieutenant, win. So, you know, if that makes sense. I mean, sometimes when you start designing races, you'll design a scenario in which, oh, this horse can win. But then you very quickly can say, well, if that scenario happens, this horse is going to win. And that's kind of the same situation. Oh, they don't go very fast. He gets an easy lead. The rail's good that day. All of those things, I still think that Dr. Door, the lieutenant, get a trip just as good and beat him.
I like that way of looking at the world. You know, a lot of times I'll talk about so-and-so looks the best of the speed, so-and-so is the best closer. And I think that's sort of a shorthand way of doing exactly what you're saying. And you can sometimes find horses at the lower end of the odds spectrum to oppose when you're doing that, because essentially what you're saying is if it's going to be a race flow that plays to the speed, this is the one I want to have on tickets. If it's going to be a race flow that plays to closers, I want this one. So maybe this one that's 4-1 that doesn't have as good a post as the one I think is the best closer anyway. Maybe that's where I can try to take my stand by leaving this shorter priced horse off of my tickets completely. Same idea, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I mean, I think, when you're designing the race, you design the race to see, what kind of trips are going to help which kind of horses. And then when you create a story or a narrative for how a horse is going to win, you cannot ignore the fact that if that scenario happens, if there's another horse that's a more likely winner.
All right. We have so many questions about this Kentucky Derby. Well, let's just go through them and we'll let the conversation dictate how much time we spend on each one. We had a question about My Boy Jack. And the specifics of it were that My Boy Jack maybe had a little bit of your old friend, Exaggerator look. Exaggerator obviously ran great in the Derby. I did want to mention one thing about Exaggerator. I was talking to somebody the other day about Exaggerator's prowess on a dry track versus a wet track. And the Derby was held up as an example of a dry track that he did well on. And while it is true that the track was technically dry, that was the year where there was that big rainstorm in between the turf race and the Derby, and the track certainly had more moisture in it than that designation would have suggested. I'm not saying that I buy the idea that he was only good on wet necessarily, but I did want to throw that out there. Just little brain thing I wanted to throw out there. But back to the question, JK. Do you see a case for My Boy Jack? To me, he just doesn't look nearly as fast as Exaggerator, and I was going to try to beat him out of the first 3 spots.
To me, My Boy Jack doesn't really have a chance to win the race. However, he is one of the horses that I think is like the most likely to run third or fourth. If there was a wager that you said this horse will run third, this horse will run fourth, he would be in my top 3 that I would pick. I don't think he can win, and I think that the connections probably know that. I think that Kent probably knows that. Keith probably knows that. I think they take back, make one run, and could pick up third or fourth, passing tiring horses late, still beating 10 or 11 lengths.
There is a bet like that. You just, the trifecta, the superfecta, where you just take that horse and key with, as many as you want in the upper spots. So that is a possibility if you think there's some value with My Boy Jack in those spots. Is that the type of bet you might make?
It depends on how many juleps I have. That's a pretty complex bet to be making at the track. But I will say this, though. The difference, I think, comparing him to Exaggerator is and this is like a zero offense deal. I think it's like a cheap comparison because they have the same silks, the same trainer, and the same rider. I think that Exaggerator was significantly, obviously, more accomplished. I think that some of My Boy Jack's performances are like you kind of want to say like, but you did get you're on a good rail, you were in it wet, like. Exaggerator was like a legit horse going into the race with a legit opportunity to win the race. I don't believe that My Boy Jack can win.
Folks, note this time and date. JK said something genuine and nice about Exaggerator. Clearly the détente at WinStar the other week is already paying dividends. Another specific horse we had questions about, Lone Sailor, specifically Lone Sailor's last work, and if that work was perhaps too fast. Did you see the work in question? What do you think of Lone Sailor?
I didn't see the work. I've heard the work, and I've heard the work was good, and so I'll just leave it at that. I'm not a it's too fast work guy. Horses used to run back in weeks, and the idea that a horse it worked too fast going 5 furlongs. I just getting ready for a 1.25 mile race. If that 5 furlong workout took enough out of him to have him hit the board in the Derby, I don't subscribe to that.
How much are you paying attention to the workouts in general between now and the first Saturday in May?
Yeah, I mean, I look, but I kind of wait. I wait until the whole body is done. I want to see, and then I want to watch the kind of in-depth situations. Watch Mike Welsh's videos where he talks about where he has those follow-ups on how they galloped after they worked. They worked really fast. Lone Sailor worked 57-3, but then he shows back up 2 days later and gallops and looks strong as ever. He's really on the muscle, or it looked to take something out of him. I want the whole picture. One of the biggest mistakes, and I've said this, and it's probably, I'm sure some of our listeners are probably annoyed of our lack of enthusiasm the last month and a half for the Derby. I taught myself that I have to wait until I have all the information, because until I have it all, I start marrying myself to things way too early, and my brain works and like with this conviction that I start. Like I said, I start hooking up to things that I shouldn't be hooked up to yet, and then it forces me into bad decisions. I like to wait till all the information is there, and I like to try to swallow it all at one time. So I will wait. I don't think the work was too fast.
Okay, I like it. This question is a good one, and we could spend a lot of time on this, maybe the rest of the show. And it has to do with which wagering options were most. Look, it's a little too early to answer, but it'll get us somewhere good, I think. Which wagering options are we most looking forward to horizontally or vertically throughout Oaks and Derby Day? And I think maybe this is a good JK to just go ahead and do our little preview, talk about some of the horses who are expected to be in the stakes on Friday and Saturday. And it may become self-evident where we're looking to dig in. And I have the Derby media report thing here. We could just go through some probable horses, starting with the Ali Sheba. We'll just go in order. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Ali Sheba, and then let's do this. I didn't tell you that this was going to happen.
Production meeting in the middle of the show. I love it. It's what we're all about here.
When we do these, when you say the race, if you can, tell me one of your favorite winners of the race.
You're going to make me have to think.
Yeah, I'll go first. So Ali Sheba, one of my favorite winners was First Dude won the Ali Sheba with Martin Garcia.
Tell me what were the circumstances there?
No, I just liked the horse, and I just remember him winning because I think I scored. I'm not. I at least got some beer money. That was back in my Derby on a budget days where it was a struggle. You had to hit the ATM a few times.
Back in 2011 was First Dude. Way back there. Did we make any noise last year with Bird Song in this race? I'm remembering that's the first winner that pops to mind.
Yeah. Gold Rail. That's when it was a used because we knew the rail was gold that day, and he was down on the inside and he popped and went to the front, didn't he?
That sounds right. Right. Good, a very clever ride. Let's talk about this year's running. We've got Always Dreaming, Backyard Heaven, Goatstown, and Hence listed as probables for it.
Always Dreaming. It's always exciting to get a Derby winner back to the scene of the crime too, huh? Back at Churchill. Hasn't really found his form that he had last year on the first Saturday in May, but always good to have him back in action.
Do you think it could create a wagering opportunity for or against?
Yeah, I don't know. What's great about it, and this is just an easy plug, is with all of those horses, shipping, Todd having 4 Derby horses, so on and so forth. I would imagine that Always Dreaming worked at Churchill, so he'll be in the Churchill report that Mike Welsh and team put out. You'll have the indicators that you need to know what direction he's going in. He got a great figure last time. I mean, against Conquest Big E, he got a figure that I think it was a triple-digit buyer, but it was at least up there if it wasn't, 98, 99, 100-ish. So maybe they found his form a little bit. Maybe he's ready to rock and roll. We'll have to see who else shows up in the race. Off the top of my head, I don't know a ton about the other horses that are listed, but I think that's always a fun race to kind of get a Derby winner back.
Hence the other brand name, I suppose, in there. But yeah, we'll be going into all these races in detail next week. We should say we've got a terrific lineup. We're going to do the Oaks Stakes and Oaks itself, the deepish dive. on Wednesday with Nick Tamaro joining. And then on Thursday, if it all works out, we're going to have the first half of the show, Paul Matisse to talk about the undercard races. And then for the last half of the show, Paul will stick around and we'll be joined by Mike Maloney, if he wasn't offended by my throat clearing comment, to talk about the Derby itself in a deep dive.
Speaking of Paul Matisse, did you see what that legend did yesterday?
I did see, but tell the listeners.
And the Bet Keenan charity thing that I whiffed on last week when I did it, Paul he hit a 20-1 shot, ice he hit him cold. He keyed a 20-1 shot on top and hit the horse and won $1,800 yesterday for the charity. I think he probably had the biggest performance of the series so far. So
fantastic.
He did not. And let me be clear, he did not catch the 20-1 shot. He keyed the 20-1 shot.
Explain. I know what you mean, but for the listeners, explain what you mean by that.
Yeah, he didn't just use the horse in a box or use
one
the
of
horse
5
in a pick
horses or something. Yeah, it's a chaos race. You list 5 horses. You can, that's huge. That's very helpful, but you can't necessarily claim, hey, I picked that horse. There's something when you're doing public handicapping stuff, big difference between including a long shot that wins and, as we like to say, having it right on top. Sounds much more like the latter scenario for Paul.
Very impressive. Very, very impressive. The guy never ceases to amaze me. I think our listeners will be very pleased and probably won't get any better Derby and Oaks advice than they'll get on Thursday from 2 of the best I've ever been around.
I know. I'm looking forward to hearing from them. And Paul's philosophy, as stated in his little blurb that he gave to Keeneland, the same as one of your good friends on Twitter from Ontario, bet a little to win a lot, JK. What do we think about that philosophy?
What's funny about the bet a little to win a lot is hanging out with both him and Duke. They both approach it differently. Paul is more of a long shot player. Duke is more of a logical winner player. It's interesting to see that they kind of grew up and learned together, but their handicapping personalities led to different roads, and they're both successful horse players.
We talk about it all the time, how you have to sort of dial into whatever there's your handicapping personality and there's your wagering personality, and it's going to lead you in different directions. All right, let's go back to the exercise at hand. It's like a very special tangent edition of the DRF Players Podcast. We're going to talk about the La Troyenne. This one, I remember a lot of these winners, JK. Blind Luck winning in here. Bobby Frankel back in the day winning with you. Is there one that stands out to you? I think we all know what it's going to be.
No, I think Rachel won this race, didn't she? Or did she get beat in this race? One of these races at Churchill she got beat in. However, I will say this about the La Troyenne. One of my favorite La Troyenne stories is the first time that my Derby partner and business partner Robert Chow and I went to the Derby, we flew into Nashville. And we were trying to head over in time to watch Zenyatta, who was supposed to run in the La Troyenne.
Yep.
But we were not aware of the time change. Thank God she scratched. I would have missed it because there's a time change when you go from Nashville to Louisville. So
Central to Eastern, yeah.
That could have been very, very very upsetting if we would have missed her run there.
That would have been a bummer for sure. This year we're looking at potentials including Abel Tasman, Martini Glass, Streamline, maybe Ivy Bell, maybe Salty. Any of those leap out to you as bet-ons or against at this early stage?
No, not necessarily. I guess Abel Tasman's interesting. Her work the other day with Raya was pretty good. She's a talented filly. Obviously, she likes the track.
Did one work better than the other?
Yeah, Abel Tasman was a little bit better, but she's a champion, right? So it's okay. It's not a problem.
Should be. I was just checking.
Yeah, and then Martini Glass, she had that huge run at Oaklawn at the meet. So I think that she's one that could be a little bit tough in there too. She might be one of the best older horses that female horses that we have in training.
Let's move on to the Edgewood, also on Friday, right?
So my headphones dropped out. What was that thing you said?
The Edgewood, I'm putting a next on the docket. I think that's the next race in order on Friday, isn't it?
Edgewood is one. Who is one of my favorite winners of the Edgewood?
I just figured since you created this exercise that you'd have good answers all at the ready.
I don't know. Yeah, no, I do have good ones. I'm trying to think of the Edgewood. I've got good ones for all of them, but I just can't think of the Edgewood.
Stephanie's Kitten?
Stephanie's kitten. You know who we might get. It might be this year. Will be my favorite. We might get Rushing Fall. I hear could show up for this one.
Really? Let's see what's listed in the media report here. Looks like probables include Althea, Beyond Blame, Bo Peep, Daddy is a Legend, Heavenly Love, who sort of we liked so much last year as a 2-year-old and has kind of gone off form. Cabela and Toinette are the ones listed. But boy, that would be some headline power if Rushing Fall were to be added to the mix.
Yeah, no, we were speculating. So there's a possibility. Obviously, they're going to be probably working backwards from the Belmont Oaks. Probably the same for Analyze It. We're working backwards for there. So I'm not sure how that works for them from a timing standpoint. But it'd be great if we could get her there on Derby or Oaks Day.
Now, here's an easy one for me. 8 Bell Stakes, most memorable winner. Maybe the first head-to-head bet I ever had on the DRF Players podcast. I still haven't collected my $20 or 20 jelly beans, from Mike Hogan, podcast host emeritus, for Karina Mia. I guess that was now 2 years ago.
Yes, that was a good one. Julian Leperoux, I remember that when she definitely got the job done. Mike was a little bullish on there, and not to say that we weren't always right when it came to those situations with Mike, but that was definitely one of our shining moments.
That's right. You were I forgot you were involved in that too, or at least on my side of the argument, even if you didn't have skin in the game. This year we're looking at Hold Her Tight, Cram, Mia, Mischief, Salt Bay, Shamrock Rose, Talk Vouv to Me, and a horse I'll simply refer to as it would be nice if folks at the Jockey Club checked Urban Dictionary.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would recommend not letting your kids search that horse's name on Urban Dictionary. It's funny. It's funny. I've got friends that obviously have tried to reserve names, and I've seen some pretty unfair denials compared to that one slipping through the cracks.
I think we can say it is the horse's name, Gas Station Sushi. Anything in there that you're looking at, one way or the other from this far out?
No, I think she's pretty good, to be honest. Gas Station Sushi, I think she might be a freak. So, be interesting to see what she does in that spot. And then other than that, Talk Vouv to Me. It was a horse for Rudy Brissett. We've talked about Rudy a lot on here. That horse was one that broke the debut at Fairgrounds. And I know we're not supposed to do this, but it's important. The horse that ran second to her, also trained by Rudy, won next out at Keeneland over the so just look at her form. Whoever Talk Vouv ran second to her, that horse came back and won at Keeneland. So I think Talk Vouv for me might be pretty special.
Interesting. Good note there. I don't have a specific memory off the top of my head, JK, of this of the turf sprint that they run over the weekend. It's going to be on Friday, obviously. But I'll tell you some horses who are going to be competing in it this year: Uchero, Chief Chickatrees, Flash Away, Frisky Magician, Imprimis, Kid Perfect, Leighton Revenge, Restless Rambler, Riser, and Vision Perfect. Any thoughts, past or present runnings of the turf sprint?
Yeah, so I want the fast one. So whoever the fast one is the one that is the one that I'm going to want. These 5 furlong turf sprints obviously are ones that are usually won by that. I want to say Chamberlain Bridge. Yes, back in 2009, I remember when he won with the late Garrett Gomez up. That was an interesting one. And then of course our friend Tom Lute when he was at I'm going blank on the name now, of course, because with Regally Ready. Vinery with Regally Ready when he won. So that's always a fun race, too. And what's funny, it's always usually one of the first stakes, and that's how I do Derby is I show up when the stakes start because it's too long of a day to do otherwise. And so I always remember walking into the track and checking these out.
All right, let's go on. Sent your programming note there. Let's go on to some of the Saturday stakes, JK. Starting with a race, I just can't think of any horses who've won it recently, but it's the Turf Classic, and this year's running looks loaded with Arklow, Beach Patrol, Channel Maker, Deauville, Kurilov, Shining Copper, Sir Dudley Diggs, Synchrony, and War Decree, all pointing towards here supposedly.
There is we hook up to this show via Skype. There is a red button with an X on it. And if you don't get it together, I will push that button and you will finish the show by yourself.
I was going to keep this joke rolling for a while. We have the American Turf coming up in 2 races as well.
Yeah, hey, the big horse, unfortunately, is not going to be here. They renamed this race the Old Forester Turf Classic. I guess they must have missed the memo that they were supposed to rename it the Desidero Turf Classic.
There it is. Get those bingo cards out. I was going to try to talk about these 2 races without naming Desidero, just to completely defy and confound listeners' expectations. But, of course, we know his classic win being last year, his American win, the big one for you being years ago.
Back turf classic wins, PTF.
Oh, won 3 years in a row on
He's 3 years in a row on Derby on the grass.
That's true. He will not be competing. It doesn't sound like. Not quite ready for action in the new barn.
It doesn't appear, but geez, Louise, you would have thought this would have been the target, right?
It would have been. It would have been to the point where something went wrong somewhere along the line.
Exactly. Beach Patrol obviously was a horse that's weird. I think we talked about this, Pete. Like we both liked and used all over the place, and then he did something that made us angry, and then we started fading him, and then he started beating us, and he's
a drum.
He's a weird horse that I don't usually have horses where I fall in love and then out of love with, but for whatever reason, he made us pay for it. I think he's going to be super tough in here. Then bringing him back into training as a 6-year-old, seemingly I would imagine to try to snag a few more Grade 1 wins to try to make a stallion out of this guy.
Yeah, which he should be able to do. I mean, he very much arguably best in the Breeders' Cup Turf. Contesting that pace and still
right. And the Secretariat win has to help when it comes to becoming a stallion. So, Lemon Drop Kid out of a Quiet American Mare should be fine. So we'll see. He should be tough in there. Fun to watch. I'm sure Chad will have something else in there to run as well. And let's see who else.
Your old buddy Arklow. Talk about your old buddy Arklow.
I'm not really sure who you're talking about.
Aren't you looking at his picture right now? Or did you take it down out of shape?
No, it's right there. It's up there. Like at Notre Dame when they go out of the tunnel, they hit it on their way out. When I get on the plane next week to head to Louisville, I'll hit it on the way out.
You will not be leaving Arklow off your tickets this time around, will you? Or will you really just handicap the race objectively, and if you don't like Arklow, you'll happily leave him off?
The second one. Handicap it objectively and leave him off if I need to, and I'll use him if I need to. He will go where he deserves to be as an A, a B, or a C horse. Churchill
Downs. We're going to have to speed through these, JK. We're running out of time. Looking at Imperial Hint, Limousine Liberal, McCracken, Outplay, Petrov, Unbridled Outlaw, Warriors Club.
I'm excited already about McCracken and the option and the opportunity to get him going 6. We've been, I don't know if you're a guy that puts a lot of trip notes. I'm sure you've got cut back, needs shorter, and somewhere in there. And I think he could be dangerous going 6 as a kind of a late running sprinter. Should get some speed to close into. They're going 7 here. I think McCracken could be tough.
So I'm confused. You said you like him going 6, but this race is 7, isn't it?
I mean 7. I'm sorry. Yeah, I got excited.
Misspoke.
Yeah.
Okay, you misspoke. So you like him going 7. This race is 7. You think McCracken finally gets a chance to do what it is that he wants to do. He's one in there also that, we've talked about so many times as one who probably didn't want to go that far after all, and it will be very interesting. Obviously, Limousine Liberal, another who, just I will imagine will jump off the page there. Race I'm very much looking forward to looking at for real. The American Turf, this year's crew, Admiralty Pier, Arawak, Channel Cat, Dragon Drew, Maraud, Ride a Comet, River Boyne, 3 and 4 Pence, Tigers Rule, Tis Mischief, Untamed Domain among the probables. Untamed Domain, another coming out of that Super Live Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, obviously has had some starts since then, including a non-taking experiment on the dirt. Looking forward to seeing Untamed Domain back on turf.
3 names that excite me. One of them you already said, Untamed Domain. Tis Mischief, a horse that I've wanted to fall in love with all year, and on these dirt races leading up to the Derby. He is now going to try turf. I think he's a talented horse. I definitely want to see how he's working. I doubt he probably got his last work on the turf. I'm not sure how Churchill does their turf works when it comes to these younger horses. But I will let people know that don't follow California racing. This River Boyne is nice, very nice horse. He's got 3 wins in a row, running nice figures against nice horses. Not always getting the best trips, but he's really a nice horse. So I would be aware of him when you're looking through those PP.
Humana, Distaff, Probables, American Gal, Finley's Lucky Charm, Jordan's Henny, Lewis Bay, Miner's Cat, Sky Diamonds, with Ivy Bell listed as a possible. Any leap off the pages there, for or against?
I think Finley with home court showing back up here. Obviously, the last race she got it done, but I believe she was off a break there. Now she's going to be even tighter here with her pace advantage. I think she could be tough.
Wouldn't want to rule out a bounce back from Lewis Bay either, just off the cuff. Obviously, we need to take a look. We'll be talking about these races for real next week, but it's kind of fun exercise and get people excited about some of the talented thoroughbreds we'll be running next Friday and Saturday. Next up, the Distaff Turf Mile. Probables including Juno, La Coronel, Madame Dance-A-Lot, Madame Stripes, On Leave, Psycho Sister, Res Ipsa, and Union Strike.
Yeah, Madame Stripes, I believe, is my Kent DeSormo filly that found herself on the lead last time. Second off of a break, I'd like to give her another shot. This is going to be a situation where you got to really know who's going to show up here, because La Coronel could be loose if there isn't any other speed. If there's a ton of speed, On Leave could come running late. This is one you definitely want to see how it draws so you can design the race a little bit better.
Pat Day Mile, one really interesting contender listed in here from the Aidan O'Brien camp, Seahenge, who I had not thought of as a dirt horse, but we'll take a look a lot closer between now and next week. Believe in Royalty, Gimme a Minute, Gravitos, Lambo, Madison's Luma, Mask, Mississippi, National Flag, New York Central, Shane Zane, Smart Remark, and Title Ready, among the others. I'll let you talk about Mask.
Yeah, no, I think Mask obviously had some big figures as a 2-year-old, and then also had that big run in the Mucho Macho Man. He should be tough. He should be bet.
I think just one big figure as a 2-year-old, right? Isn't it just the 2 races from Mask, or am I missing one?
I'm sorry. One big figure as a 2-year-old, and then another big figure early in his 3-year-old year in the Mucho Macho Man. I was trying to move quickly, and I jumped ahead of my words there. But yeah, no, I think Mask should be tough.
Don't worry, somebody's upset outside, but it doesn't have to do with us.
Well, it might be. They might be mad about me saying 2-year-old figures. Obviously, I'm hopeful that Mask shows up on the workout report. If not, I'm sure you can find his last work on XBTV. But he's a talented horse that I think he could be tough in there with that 1-turn mile. Have a good future in him in his 3-year-old year.
I'm going to guess producer Craig has engineered this traffic jam in front of my house to get us to get off the air and get on with the day and Matt Bernier's show, etc. Once again, we'll be back next weekend. Oh, I promised I was going to do this and I forgot. We have a listener who has 6 prime tickets to Oaks and Derby. They are very expensive tickets. If price is a big object, don't inquire about them. If you're looking for first-class Derby with a good spot, first-class Oaks, good spot, food and drinks included, then you are the person who wants to contact us about potentially getting these 6 tickets, expensive tickets, for Oaks and Derby Day. The reason I'm doing this, my name ain't Craig. I don't have a list. But I'm doing this because the man who possesses the tickets has promised to make important donation to the TAA should we on the podcast help these tickets to get sold. So that's why I'm throwing it out there. If you're interested potentially in these Derby tickets, contact me on Twitter, tweet at me, @LoomsBoldly, hit me up, podcast@drf.com. Maybe we can accommodate you. These are the kind of tickets that sell out within 3 hours the first day they're open. There should be a market out there. Wouldn't surprise me if somebody within the sound of my voice could be part of that market. Once again, @LoomsBoldly, podcast@drf.com. Let me know. We can get you some good Derby situations, and we can raise some money for the TAA. Want to thank Jonathan Kinchin. Want to thank producer Craig. Want to thank Willie Nile for more of his music. WillieNile.com for providing the theme song. We also, of course, want to thank the voice of the Kentucky Derby, Travis Stone, for his voiceover talent. Most of all, want to thank all of you for listening, especially those of you who took the time to submit questions. We'll be back next week, Wednesday at 11 Eastern, Thursday at 11 Eastern. Tune in live or check us out wherever you get your podcast. We'll be back then. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatale. May you win all your photos.